Hi, and welcome to this month's Rule of Carnage Kickstarter Roundup. So it's February 2024, which means that Design Quest has been in full effect on Kickstarter for a little while. So it's been a bit tricky to pick out those miniatures related projects, but we've got a good handful. Got a few game campaigns, some models, an accessories campaign, and a handful of STLs. So we're going to launch straight in with that game campaign, and it is Dark Horizons Universe Mechanized Core Make 100 by X10 Game Studio. This is a really interesting one. So aside from Design Quest, Kickstarter runs their Make 100 campaigns, which are for campaigns to make 100 of a particular game or thing, and no more than that. And it's unusual to see a game and a minis game that's well put together in that campaign. But this is a pretty decent looking campaign. It's for a mech-driven combat game. It's only the game-wise sort of at the playtesting stage at the moment. So the campaign is really mainly for the mechs for one of the forces. But I'm including it as a game because you can get in on the playtesting level right now. So if you're a fan of things like Battletech, if you enjoy mech combat, and I know a good few people who watch the channel do, it's a hex-based game. So if you'd like to get in on something like that, get in at sort of the ground level, play test it, work with somebody who's making such a game, I think this is a really great one to back. The mechs look really nice, the STLs look really cool, but it's just an opportunity to get in there on the ground level of a game that's being built, have some input. They're planning on releasing a sort of more complete later game in the year. So I think it's a really cool one to check out if you're interested in game design, if you like mechs, if you want to get in on something that's new and growing and hopefully interesting. So yeah, definitely check this one out. Okay, next up for our game campaigns, we've got Epic Warpath, the game of sci-fi mass battles by Mantic Games. Okay, well, I mean, if you are watching the channel, I probably don't need to make a lot of introduction for this one. Mantic Games are hugely well known. They're definitely one of the big players in this area of the world. And this is their tiny scale, large scope sci-fi mass battle game that's just been released. It's going great guns on Kickstarter. It's well on its way to 2,000 backers. It's going really brilliantly. Look, if you don't know, then Mantic are an extremely reliable company. This is an extremely reliable Kickstarter, which is the main reason for putting in the roundup. They also make, solid, interesting games that are well put together. And this is a sort of teeny tiny scale, so little 5mm minis, massive scope sci-fi game. So if you're hankering for some of those games where you've got, tons of tiny little dudes and huge, great, big, stompy robots and things of that nature crushing around a city and, destroying massive swathes of men with everything that they do, then I think this is absolutely for you. Clearly it's harkening back to Space Marine and Epic and things of that nature from GW, and I think it definitely needs a bit of support, being in the ring with GW on this particular front. And I think, lovely sort of tiny scale minis in large scope games are just tons of fun. It's really great sort of having big old mechs running around the place and having a really epic, as is the title of the game, a really epic battle where massive things happen and huge swathes get affected. So definitely check this one out and give it a look over. Okay, moving on from our game campaigns, we've got one accessories campaign for this month, and it is How to Build Tabletop Terrain, Painting and Vegetation by Michael Martin. So a few times on the channel in our conversations, Mike and myself have talked about the fact that hobby books, miniatures books these days don't necessarily feature some of the old school hobby sections that we remember from some of those older GW publications. And while there are loads of sort of great YouTube videos and elements online you can pick up, it's not quite the same as being able to sit down with a book and go through things sort of step by step and, you know, really get sort of some details and a certain sort of explanation that you get from a book in how to do your hobby bits and pieces. So this is a really cool book, a really nice book, I think. Definitely for anybody who's starting out in the hobby, maybe, you know, been in the hobby quite a while, because there are plenty of people who play at clubs, play at stores, haven't necessarily got into making and building their own bits of terrain. And this is a book that's giving you some sort of tips and tricks and details and elements on building specifically vegetation, greenery, plants, and particularly weathering and painting those pieces, because it's very easy to just sort of get trees and bushes from a model train supplier and just stick them straight onto the tabletop, and they look fine, but they don't quite have that feel to them. That's because you need to sort of paint them, weather them, make them feel a certain way, and this book details all of that. So I think it's really handy for people who are looking to make their own terrain but aren't super experienced yet. People who want those last few little bits to bring their terrain up to sort of the next level. Well worth checking out, well worth giving a look over. Okay, that's it for accessories campaigns. On to our physical model reward campaigns for this month. And first up, we've got Down and Out on Grubb Street, Townsfolk by Midlam Miniatures. Well, we're opening up the physical rewards with a repeat creator who I keep featuring on the channel because everything they do I really enjoy. I love the look of it, I love their style. Midlam are super reliable. They keep putting Kickstarters out, they keep supplying their Kickstarters. This is as close to a guarantee as I think you can possibly get on Kickstarter. This particular set of minis, they're sort of in the ballpark of medieval, peasantry, people who are down on their luck, who are struggling a bit, who aren't having the best of times of it. I constantly complain about the lack of civilians, background characters, people who aren't wandering around heavily armed and ready for a fight within miniatures. So it's great to see you know, a reliable creator putting these guys out who have tons of character, who look just, you know, like every single one of them has a full story. They can bring a tabletop to life, they can be sort of scenario objectives, you know, background elements. I think it'd be kind of fun to make these guys into a little skirmish game, you know, warband of some kind. But yeah, just something really lovely to add some sort of depth to your tabletop. Some great metal miniatures just to own and paint for modelers. Perfect for anybody who's into dioramas, things of that nature. Yeah, well worth checking out and well worth giving this one a look over. Strong recommend on this one. Okay, next up for our physical model campaigns, we've got Goblins and Gobblers, Metal Miniatures by Troglodyte. Well, this is quite a small campaign, but it's one that's packed with character and has some really lovely minis, so it's well worth checking out. What it's for is for what I would call some cave squigs and some night goblin prodders. It's about enough for usually a small unit, maybe about like half a unit a lot of the time, as to like how many of these guys you want, but they're lovely. They're old school sculpts, they're metal miniatures, they're full of character, full of feeling. I mean, cave squigs I think are, you know, often sort of full of character and features and feeling, and these ones are absolutely sort of no exception. But it's a small project by a small creator, and they're fun and they're cool and they're worth having. So definitely swing by, give this one a look over if you are a goblin collector, if you are somebody who likes minis that have some character and some feel and some old school sculpting sort of grit to them. Check these ones out. They're loads of fun, they're really cool. It's a small minis group of minis, it's a small creator. Give them a bit of support, give them a bit of love. Okay, last up for our physical model reward campaigns this month, we have got Conquerors of Samarkand, 28mm Mongol Steppe Cavalry and More by Satanic Panic Miniatures. So This is a slightly larger campaign, but still by very much an independent creator and another repeat creator that we featured a few times on the channel. It's a campaign for, I would say, about sort of 4 units and some characters worth of some Mongol horde sort of style looking miniatures, with Old World coming back and Cathay being rumoured as a possible future army. These guys would be great to sort of pick up for something like that. I think they'd make, a lovely addition to any sort of mass battle human barbarian army. I think they're going to work brilliantly in things like saga or anything historic that could involve riders of this type. As I say, a repeat creator, a reliable creator, a creator who keeps putting out really nice old school minis with a great look to them and some old school hand sculpting, which is great to see. So yeah, if you are looking to pick up a warband's worth, a good solid warband's worth, or a significant chunk of a mass battle's worth of horse riding, sort of Mongolian styled guys, as I say, sort of about 3 or 4 decent sized units, some nice characters, definitely swing by, give this one a look over. Really nice minis, really cool independent creator. Yeah, check it out for definite. Okay, that is it for our physical model reward campaigns this month. Moving on to our STL file campaigns. We've got a few cool ones this month. And starting off with Grid City by Saucerman Studios. The thing that can be tricky sometimes with terrain is being stuck with one particular setup or one particular look on a tabletop. So whenever I see something that's got a strong modular element to it, I always try and include it. And this campaign has some really, really cool cyberpunk buildings with a sort of oriental feel to them in a modular sort of set of elements. So if you are looking for something with that sort of far futuristic, slick, strong feeling, and you want something with a very strong, very cool sort of Orientalism style vibe to them, these are some great bits and pieces to pick up. Very modular, so you can pick them up and print them off and have 100 tabletops within a single collection of terrain, which is great because terrain can be a fuss to store. It can be, tricky to keep around. You're not going to want it for every single game. And obviously cyberpunk is a weeny bit niche, but these are super cool. They're going to be great for anything, within that sort of genre, or more general sort of sci-fi gaming, anything of that nature. These are going to be flexible, really cool looking, bring a real character and a feel and sort of a strength to the tabletop, and great for creating really crowded, alley filled, rooftop filled tabletops. I think, yeah, definitely worth checking this one out. Okay, next up for our STL file campaigns, we've got Armies of the Sands expansion by Taxali Factory. Unsurprisingly, there have been a couple of, let's say, desert undead or mummy-led undead armies over the last month or so. It's as though there's a big player that's attracted people's attentions to kings and rulers that come out of tombs within the sands. This one, I would say, is the best of those campaigns that's out at the moment. It's a really solid, sort of a decent army. It's certainly, a strong start to an army's worth of minis. Of course, them being STLs, you can reprint, you can digitally kit bash, you can physically kit bash to get, I think, a good size army out of these guys. All the bits and pieces you want. They've got, different units, different sets of armaments, chariots, of course, characters, all that lovely stuff. Plenty to get going with a undead desert dwellers army, 3D printed at home. you know, possibly getting into a new game system that they would be suitable without having to pay a certain large company a significant amount of money. So well worth checking this one out if that feels like the sort of thing you'd be interested in giving a try. Well worth looking over the campaign, just if you're generally interested in, you know, desert undead, chariots, you know, skeleton bowmen, all of that sort of lovely stuff. Yeah, give that one a look over for definite. Okay, next up for our STL file campaigns, we've got Old Realm Forge, The Underground War by Old Realm Forge. Now, this is a really interesting campaign from a first-time creator, so definitely swing by, give them a bit of support. It's interesting to me because it's two sort of opposing forces. You've got the classic dwarves and goblins in this campaign. So there's sort of a single campaign here that gives you like a little 2-player starter set of STL files for playing through a fantasy game. There's enough there for a pretty small mass battle army at a push. I would look for this more like for playing a 2-player starter of a range of fantasy skirmish games. So about the Saga Age of Magic scale, but there's plenty here that will slot in very, very neatly to pre-existing dwarven or goblin ranges. They're really nice. They're full of character. They've got a certain sort of old school, old hammer feel to them, which is always lovely to see in sort of 3D STL sculpts. They look very paintable. They look very modelable. They look very solid and printable. So yeah, well worth checking out, I think, if you're looking to expand out an existing army, pick up something that will work as a neat starter set for really any fantasy skirmish warband scale game, something where you're looking to pick up minis quickly to start for you and a friend to get interested in a range of games that would support dwarves and goblins, which is really, you know, any fantasy game that you might care to mention. So yeah, well worth checking out for the old school feel to these guys. Well worth checking out to get a sort of 2-player starter set of STLs, and well worth checking out to support a first-time creator on Kickstarter. Okay, next up for our STL file campaigns, we've got Tokugawa Guardians, 3D printable STL samurai miniatures by Forged Path Miniatures. I don't know if there's something going on that I'm not aware of, but for some reason this month on Kickstarter there's a couple of kitsune or sort of cat people samurai forces in the STL sections. This, I think, is the better of the ones I've seen. This one has a really nice mix of human samurai, kitsune, some more unusual elements and some unusual miniatures within guys that would sit really nicely into sort of a historic warband style game. So this gives you the options to use them for, I think, a wider range of games. Also, this comes with like decent sized units worth of differently armed minis. So I think this is one that has the most utility, the most usability, the most practicality to it. And the minis themselves are lovely, really nice sculpts, full of character, full of detail. You've got samurai, as I say, you've got the kitsune, you've got sword armed, bow armed, you've got characters, you've got enough there for a solid warband's worth of minis, for something from like Test of Honor through to something like Saga. I think there's enough here to fill out a decent sized Saga force. So something of that scope. But yeah, anything where you're looking to put together a really, really cool, really detailed looking group of samurai to play for a skirmish game sort of level, a warband level game. Yeah, where you want lots of detail, lots of cool minis, any one of which looks like they could be like a character in their own right. Give this one a look over and check it out. Okay, last up for our STL file campaigns, and last up for our campaigns this month, we have got Tuks and Trucks by Core Aeronautics. So this is a really tiny little campaign from an independent creator, and it's for tuk-tuk cabs as STL files. So for anybody who isn't aware, the tuk-tuk is a sort of uniquely Thai vehicle used, a tiny little cab used for all sorts of elements and purposes, and it's quite iconic. It turns up in a lot of sort of action films and films generally set within that area. And these guys, there's just a few files. They're quite small. As I say, it's a tiny campaign, but there's a lot of charm to them. I pick it up particularly because I know there's a fair few people watching our channel that do play Gaslands. I've had people ask about tuk-tuk cabs before. Where could they be gotten from? What can you do to represent them in the game? So I thought this would be a nice one to include on the roundup. I always like to include, some campaigns that haven't quite made it yet. This campaign isn't quite at its funding total yet. I definitely think it's going to get there. It's got enough time, and it's just a tiny bit off of getting over the line, which is another great reason to please stop by this campaign, check it out. If you can find a good reason to have some tuk-tuk cabs within your collection, to use them in maybe a post-apocalyptic car racing game, but anything that's, contemporary onwards, these guys would work brilliantly as a bit of street furniture, a bit of extra character, a bit of just extra fun and interest and coolness on the table. Please give them some support, give them some help. Let's get them over the line. Let's get them funded. Okay, as I said, that is it for this month. It's been sort of an unusual month. February, as I say, with ZineQuest always is. I've managed, I think, to pick out the very, very best I could find on Kickstarter for this month. I really think it's been good going to the sort of the monthly roundups, because I've been able to really cherry pick stuff out rather than to just have sort of what's available. All of these campaigns are fantastic. I know I've said on a few of them, really recommend this one, but that's because they're all really good campaigns. I really recommend all of them, in the sort of new monthly format over the weekend, over the week-long version. Obviously, I'll be back next month with another roundup. This Saturday, as usual, I'll be doing a game design chat with Mike Hutchinson, and hopefully there's going to be some other things popping up on the channel over the weeks and months to come, so please do look out for all of those. If you back any of these campaigns, please swing down into the comment section, tell me which one you backed, why you think it's interesting, why you think it's fun. Give us a like and subscribe while you're in there, and then swing by the Discord and tell me what you backed, why you backed it. I love to know what hobby people are interested in, what people are attracted by it, and what people think are cool at the moment. But for now, from me and from this episode of Rule of Carnage, it's going to be a thank you, goodbye. So thank you and goodbye. Bye-bye.